Hey, legitimate chef. So this is basically the problem you have. You have a room looking something like this. Let's imagine with insulated tile around the outside. Imagine these airflow tiles are your hydrogen vent, and this is the neutronium that the hydrogen vent sits on. I imagine something like this, your situation might be different, but basically the way that you're going to want to try and recover from the situation where you have a broken gas pump in here, and you don't want to let this hot hydrogen out because it'll burn your duplicants or stuff like that, is basically you want to take one of these top corners, whichever one is easiest, and deconstruct this little bit of insulation that you have around here if you have that built already. And then what you're going to want to do is go to plumbing and have kind of diagonally your duplicants build a liquid vent. I know in the past this works, I think it still works today, and hook this up to liquid pipe and basically just start pumping in water through here, and the water will help cool down a lot of this hydrogen. Even though this hydrogen has a decent specific heat capacity of 2.4, there's only 2 kilograms of it per tile, so if you fill up sort of the bottom of this area with water, that's going to be a lot more thermal mass than this hydrogen has. You're going to be able to cool down a lot of this hydrogen without the water warming up so that much. So pump in a bunch of water until you get to something like this, where you've got, sure, something like this. Until you've got basically 2 tiles of water down here at the bottom, right? Now, if we just let this exchange heat, right, it's going to be fairly efficient. Like, we see this hydrogen starting to fall, and it's going to kind of slowly make its way up here and cool down this area. But what you can do to speed that up and also kind of work with this area even as you're waiting for this to happen is you can take some insulated tile, build out a little nub like this, and then build some ladder down, and have your duplicants just deconstruct these 2 tiles, right? So pause, let's say imagine these were gone, and this will make like a little water lock in this area so that the hydrogen won't escape, and then your duplicants can work in this area, and because this water is still relatively cool, they're not going to get burned by going into this area. So what you can do is you can have them go in here and start installing temp shift plate. Granite's fine, really anything's fine. Any amount of temp shift plate is going to help. Metal, of course, is best if you can spare it. But basically just build some temp shift plate like around here, just so that you can get better heat transfer to this hydrogen. See how fast it's falling now? It's just really rocketing downwards. That's really going to improve the heat transfer between the water that you have down here and the hydrogen. And then once this area is cool enough, what you can do is you can just have your duplicants build a ladder up, right? So build some ladder out of something to wherever you have your pump, and you can then just say, deconstruct this pump or rebuild it. Since I don't have duplicants to run in there, I'm just going to destroy it like this. But then you can say, okay, look, I want to replace this pump. What I also want to do is set up a Atmos sensor. So you're going to set up an Atmos sensor if you have some refined metal. That's perfect. Set up a little Atmos sensor here. It might take a little while for this to cool down completely to a point where you can start building something here. Ideally, you want to make this pump out of steel or gold because that's going to have a higher overheat temperature and give you a little bit more leeway. But you can get by with even just normal materials here, because what you're going to do with this Atmos sensor is you're going to say send a green signal if above 500 grams, right? So you can keep on putting water into this room if you like and pump water out. So at this point you can start building as well a liquid pump. Make this out of iron ore, copper, whatever, right, to pump out the coolant once it's sort of done. So you can have a process like this where fresh coolant is coming in and it's getting at the bottom, and once this area gets hot enough, you can then have it pump out and have more coolant pump in and kind of control the cooling that way. But this big sort of cooling pool should probably be enough to cool down your hydrogen vent and prevent this water from turning into steam. But once you've kind of got this area cool enough, you can go ahead and say, okay, ventilation, gas pump, make this out of like gold amalgam. Gold amalgam is going to have an extra 50 degrees to the overheat temperature. Steel is going to have an extra 200 degrees. You can get away with gold. You can in fact get away with like iron or copper so long as you have enough cooling in this area. We're going to make this steel for now because I don't want to wait for this area to cool down. But then you can hook this all back up. This is all hooked up. And what you're going to do is go to automation wire, and then hook up this right here. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to say, I only want to pump out the hydrogen gas if you have more than 500 grams in here. That'll prevent this thing from becoming overpressured, but it'll also mean that you leave 500 grams of hydrogen in this room so that while this is on downtime, right, while it's dormant, you're not pumping out all the gas, because if you do that, what's going to happen is when this thing goes active again, it's going to refill the room with 500-degree hydrogen, and you're probably not going to have enough heat transfer from your pool of water at the bottom to keep all this cool. But if you keep a whole bunch of 50-degree hydrogen in here, then when that 500-degree hydrogen starts coming out, it's going to immediately mix with the hydrogen that's around here and be at a much lower temperature, right? So already we see this area is down to 125, which is where the point where you could have a gold gas pump and be doing work. But yeah, so make sure you're not pumping out all the gas in this room. That way when new fresh gas comes in, it's immediately mixing with the surrounding hydrogen and becoming a colder hydrogen, right? You're not getting 500-degree hydrogen just blowing directly on this gas pump. And that's basically it. This is sort of the process for recovering one of these broken things. You need to pump in coolant from a diagonal like this is the easiest way without sort of breaking the seal that you have. Once you've got this layer of coolant on the bottom, you can build a little ladder down here, and this will provide an airlock to keep all this stuff in. And because this water is going to remain fairly cold because it's just so much more thermally massive than the hydrogen, your duplicates are going to be able to go in and work through here even without an Atmos suit and not get burned. Once this area kind of cools down enough, you can have them just climb up here, ladder up, build a gas pump out of whatever, and as long as you have this Atmos sensor system over here, you're probably going to be good in terms of keeping things nice and cool. If you need a little bit more heat transfer, what you can always do, of course, just go to utilities and build some more temp shift plate, right, and have that go up around here, and that'll really improve the heat transfer from your cold water down here up into these areas here. So hope this is helpful. This is basically how you recover from the situation that you're in, and just keep in mind with future vents, check to see what temperature they come out at, and as long as you use this little trick with the Atmos sensor and have a little bit of cooling in the system, you should be good, because ultimately there's just not a lot of thermal mass being output by these things, and so you can get away with a pretty small amount of cooling. There's a bunch of other ways to cool down the system besides just having a pool of water at the bottom. In fact, if you want this to be like a passively cooled system, a really cool thing you can do is just stick a bunch of Paku in here. I kind of explained in other videos how Paku end up cooling down systems, but that's sort of a passive way. Then you don't need to be pumping any fresh water in or pumping water out. You can just have a big Paku aquarium in here, and that actually ends up working out in terms of cooling down a gas vent like this. All right, hope that's helpful, and yeah, good luck on playing the game. Have fun.